Is there in Buddhism anything equivalent to conscience in the Christian and Western tradition?
Very broadly, perhaps there is. Sometimes Buddhi is regarded as that. Buddhi is not Bodhi, it's a slightly different word. There is a faculty of, so to speak, discrimination between what is skillful, what is unskillful, what is ethical, what is unethical. I wouldn't like to say that there could be a detailed similarity between that and the Western conception of conscience.
And associated with the idea of conscience is the experience of guilt. Is guilt appropriate within the context of Buddhist morality?
I distinguish two kinds of guilt. There's rational guilt and irrational guilt. If one has committed an action, one recognizes that one has committed an action which is genuinely unskillful, which is unethical. One can feel guilt with regards to that action in the sense of feeling shame and regret that one committed such an action. But irrational guilt is rather different. Irrational guilt seems to go back to one's childhood experience when the performance of an action which was not approved by the powers that be was followed by the threat of a withdrawal of affection. So irrational guilt is bound up, I think, with fear of affection being withdrawn, whether by one's parents or by one's Heavenly Father, that is to say, God. That sort of irrational guilt does not exist, I hope, in Buddhism. It should not exist in Buddhism.
And the more rational kind of guilt, what does one do about that?
Well, the more rational sort of guilt one deals with, well, first of all, by recognizing that one has committed an unskillful action. If possible, undoing its consequences so far as other people are concerned. If you've stolen, all right, you make restitution, and then resolving you're not going to perform that action again. There's also the question of performing meritorious actions to counterbalance. I heard recently that one of our friends became conscious that he'd performed an unskillful action, and an older member, the friend was a mitra, offered to discuss the matter with him and go into it. And he said, no, I don't want to discuss it, I don't want to go into it. I'm going to go and perform some skillful actions instead. So he went and spent the day, so I was told, at an old folks' home, helping the old folks and doing things for them, and came back in a very happy mood, free from his feelings of guilt and remorse. It had done the trick, without a lot of psychological analysis and mulling over of the problem.
So you think that could be applied more?
I think very definitely it could be applied more. I'm not saying it will necessarily meet all cases, but I think we could make very much more use of that traditional method of dealing with our lapses from our own ethical standards.
Do you think this could have some psychological application that is to psychological problems?
I think it would depend on the nature of the psychological problems. We could even say perhaps that psychological problems sometimes arise because we don't deal with our ethical backslidings in that sort of positive way.